Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Bold and Beautiful today.
Compared to Taylor, Brooke has a greater advantage. Without a doubt, Brooke Logan has an edge over Taylor Hayes. Taylor is not as advantageous as Brooke. Although it appears that both women will always be fixated on Ridge Forrester, Brooke is aware that, in contrast to Taylor, she will never be his backup plan. In addition, she is still free to enjoy herself and date other men as they wait for their destiny. Additionally, Brooke ought to accept Nick's offer and continue dating him. If Brooke is so determined to be with Taylor, why should Ridge care that he is with his half-brother? He would at least show Brooke love and respect with Nick, right? Naturally, the internet had a lot to say about the direction this plot is taking. Even if Brooke genuinely believes that Ridge will return to her eventually, why not have some fun in the meantime until he does, is one statement made by several BNB fans. Hell, even make Ridge envious. This is plain absurd. For example, how long will it take her to move on? What will happen to Brooke Logan next? Brooke and Taylor used to have options despite being obsessed with Ridge, remarked another show fan. The women must now weep behind Ridge and aren't permitted to enjoy themselves. Ridge would have been enraged by Brooke's prolonged relationship with someone else. Look, I'm a Brooke stan and I would love Nook getting together, but the way Brooke is being written right now, that ain't happening, was another comment. YBB is not gaining the devoted fans who are simply done with Bridge and Destiny is beyond me. While the decades-long battlefield between Brooke Logan and Taylor Hayes for the heart, soul, and frequently fickle attention of Ridge Forrester often resembles a brutal stalemate, a closer examination reveals that Brooke, despite the cyclical heartbreak and narrative frustration, occupies a position endowed with a fundamental and potent advantage over her rival, the unyielding conviction, seemingly validated by the show's own thematic history, that she is Ridge's ultimate, inescapable destiny. A belief that grants her a psychological resilience, a freedom Taylor cannot access, and a unique leverage that manifests even in Ridge's absence, making Brooke not just a contender, but the inevitable victor in the grand, exhausting scheme of Bridge. This advantage isn't merely about temporary possession or fleeting romantic victories, it's deeply rooted in the narrative DNA of the bold and the beautiful, where Brooke and Ridge's connection is repeatedly framed as cosmic, fated, and ultimately unconquerable by any other force, including Taylor's love or Ridge's own temporary rebellions. This bedrock belief allows Brooke to weather the storms of Ridge's departures to Taylor with a different kind of pain, one tinged with a weary certainty of his return, rather than Taylor's often desperate fear of permanent loss. Brooke operates from the core understanding that no matter how far Ridge strays, how deeply he immerses himself in his relationship with Taylor, or how vehemently he proclaims his commitment elsewhere, he will always come back to her. This isn't just hope, it's a pattern etched into decades of storyline, a history Taylor herself has been forced to witness time and again. It's the reason Brooke can declare, with a weariness born of experience rather than mere bravado, that she will never be Ridge's second option. In the final, defining analysis of his life, Ridge chooses Brooke. This conviction fundamentally alters Brooke's emotional landscape compared to Taylor's. Taylor, for all her strengths, brilliance, and genuine love for Ridge, perpetually fights from a position of inherent narrative insecurity. Her relationship with Ridge, while deep and meaningful, is consistently portrayed within the show's logic as the alternative, the respite, the reaction to Bridge turmoil, but rarely, if ever, the ordained, fated endpoint. She exists, tragically, in the shadow of destiny. Every time Ridge leaves Taylor for Brooke, it reinforces this core narrative truth, chipping away at Taylor's confidence and confirming her deepest fear, that she is, ultimately, the consolation prize, the safe harbor Ridge seeks when the tempest of his connection with Brooke becomes too overwhelming, but never the true home port. This insecurity manifests in Taylor's actions, her anxieties, her sometimes desperate attempts to hold on to Ridge, her visceral reactions to any perceived threat from Brooke. She lacks the foundational certainty that Brooke possesses, leaving her emotionally more vulnerable and reactive. Even when Taylor wins Ridge, there's an underlying tension, a knowledge that the victory might be temporary, contingent on the next inevitable Bridge reunion. Brooke, conversely, can afford a different posture. Her perceived destiny grants her a paradoxical freedom Taylor cannot claim, the freedom to wait strategically and the freedom to move on, at least superficially. Because Brooke knows Ridge will return, she isn't bound by the same frantic need to cling to him at all times to prevent his permanent departure. This is where the fan sentiment urging Brooke to have some fun or even make Ridge jealous gains traction as a manifestation of her advantage. While Taylor often seems frozen, waiting solely for Ridge's attention and validation, Brooke possesses the narrative and psychological latitude to explore other avenues without feeling she is jeopardizing her ultimate endgame. This freedom is precisely why the prospect of Brooke engaging with Nick Marone, Ridge's half-brother, resonates as a powerful tactical and emotional move, further highlighting her advantage. As fans astutely point out, why should Ridge care about Brooke being with his half-brother if he is so dead set on being with Taylor? The inherent hypocrisy in Ridge's potential objection underscores Brooke's leverage. If Ridge is genuinely committed to Taylor, Brooke's relationship with Nick should be irrelevant to him. However, the very fact that it would provoke Ridge, likely intensely, is a testament to Brooke's unique hold on him and her advantageous position. Dating Nick isn't just about finding temporary happiness or respect, which, as fans note, Nick would undoubtedly offer Brooke. It becomes a direct challenge to Ridge's assumed ownership and a stark demonstration of Brooke's agency because of her belief in their destiny. She can engage with Nick precisely because she doesn't believe it negates her future with Ridge, it merely fills the time until destiny reasserts itself. Make Ridge jealous even, fans urge, recognizing this latent power Brooke holds but often fails to wield effectively under current writing. The old Brooke, as lamented by viewers, the old Brooke would have long been with someone else, angering Ridge in the process, instinctively understood this advantage. She actively lived her life, pursued other passions and relationships, and in doing so, often inadvertently or deliberately drew Ridge back like a magnet. Her independence and refusal to be defined solely by waiting for him were paradoxically the very things that made her irresistible to him. Taylor, burdened by her secondary status in the destiny narrative, rarely exhibits this same freedom. Her moves are often reactive, defensive, focused on preserving what she has with Ridge, rather than confidently living beyond him, secure in a knowledge Brooke possesses. The current fan frustration, passionately voiced in comments like "I just don't get why BB is not getting that the longtime fans are just done with Bridge and Destiny and the women aren't allowed to have fun and instead have to cry behind Ridge," stems directly from the writer's failure to leverage Brooke's inherent advantage in compelling ways. Fans, particularly Brooke supporters, Brooke stans, recognize the potent tools at her disposal, the belief in destiny, the freedom it grants, the leverage over Ridge, the opportunity to find happiness and respect elsewhere while waiting, or moving on completely. Yet, the narrative often reduces both women to stagnant figures weeping over Ridge's indecision, squandering Brooke's unique position. The longing for Nick and Brooke, isn't just about a new pairing, it's a desperate plea for the writers to acknowledge and utilize Brooke's advantage by allowing her to act with the agency and independence her belief system should afford her. Dating Nick wouldn't be surrender. In the context of Brooke's conviction about Ridge, it would be a masterstroke, demonstrating her desirability, challenging Ridge's complacency, forcing him to confront his true feelings, and allowing Brooke to experience genuine respect and affection, all while operating within the framework that Ridge is her inevitable endgame. This is the frustrating paradox. Brooke has the better hand, the psychological certainty, the narrative history on her side, the freedom to act, but the current writing often prevents her from playing it effectively, reducing her advantage to passive waiting rather than active strategy. Taylor, lacking that core belief in her own primacy within Ridge's life story, cannot even access this level of strategic gameplay. Her actions are inherently more limited by fear of permanent loss. Therefore, while the war rages on with exhausting repetition, the fundamental asymmetry remains. Brooke Logan fights with the unshakable, history-backed conviction that the final victory is already written in the stars for her, granting her a resilience, a freedom, and a latent power that Taylor Hayes, forever fighting against the narrative tide of Bridge destiny, can never truly possess, making Brooke's position, however maddening the journey, intrinsically and profoundly advantaged. Her fortress is built on the bedrock of Ridge's inevitable return, while Taylor's, however beautiful, rests on shifting sands. Taylor just said something to Brooke that was really insane. Taylor just said something to Brooke that was really insane. Naturally, we are referring to Taylor Hayes because she recently made the most bizarre remark to Brooke Logan, her romantic rival. But rather than being wise counsel from a supposed famous therapist, this sounded more like a pot-meet-kettle situation. Taylor stated quite clearly in the most recent episode of The Bold and the Beautiful that Ridge Forrester is now her man and that Brooke would benefit much from simply separating from him. She even openly admitted to Brooke that she has worked with people that share her attachment style in relationships, and it is obviously highly problematic. This comes from a woman who recently proposed to a man who has cheated on her so frequently that even fans of the bold and the beautiful have lost track. It seems really hypocritical for someone like Taylor to give this kind of advice, doesn't it? What will happen to Brooke next? Regretfully, Brooke was dumbfounded and unsure of what to say or do. But if we've learned anything about life in this made-up metropolis of Los Angeles, it's that someone like Taylor will eventually find herself in a similar situation. We suspect that Brooke will end up with the last laugh in this scenario. Either that, or she will cry when she sees that Ridge wasn't worth the struggle. The air in Brooke Logan's living room, thick with decades of shared history, betrayal, and unyielding rivalry, became positively suffocating the moment Dr. Taylor Hayes, esteemed psychiatrist and Brooke's eternal nemesis in the war for Ridge Forrester's perpetually divided heart, delivered what can only be described as the most insane comment in their storied, tumultuous conflict. This wasn't just another barb in their endless skirmish, this was a tactical nuclear strike disguised as therapeutic insight, a moment so steeped in staggering hypocrisy that it momentarily paralyzed Brooke and left viewers reeling at the sheer audacity. Taylor, having finally maneuvered Ridge back into her orbit after his latest marital implosion with Brooke, didn't merely gloat or declare victory. Instead, she weaponized her profession, looked Brooke squarely in the eye, and pronounced with chilling clinical detachment, "I've worked with people who have the same kind of attachment style that you have when it comes to relationships, and clearly, it's very unhealthy." The subtext screamed louder than any soap opera cliffhanger, "Back off, Brooke. Ridge is mine now, and your very love is a pathology I diagnose." The sheer, breathtaking insanity of this statement lies not in its core observation. Brooke Logan's attachment to Ridge Forrester is, objectively, a masterclass in tumultuous, often self-destructive romantic entanglement, but in the identity of its deliverer. Taylor Hayes, the woman delivering this pronouncement, stands as the living, breathing embodiment of the very unhealthy attachment style she so smugly diagnoses. This isn't mere hypocrisy, it's a hall of mirrors reflecting a pathological denial so profound it borders on the Shakespearean. Taylor Hayes is Brooke Logan in a slightly more tailored lab coat. Her entire adult life narrative has been irrevocably intertwined with Ridge Forrester, a man whose romantic indecision is less a character flaw and more a fundamental force of nature in the bold and the beautiful universe. How many times has Ridge left Taylor at the altar, physically or emotionally? How many times has he dashed back to Brooke moments after whispering forever to Taylor? How many times has Taylor herself forgiven the unforgivable, rationalized the irrational, and welcomed Ridge back with open arms after he shattered her heart yet again? The count isn't just high, it's legendary, a running joke among fans who long ago lost track of the revolving door between Brooke's bedroom and Taylor's embrace. Consider the immediate context that makes Taylor's comment not just hypocritical, but clinically delusional. This is the same Taylor Hayes who, mere days or weeks prior, proposed marriage to Ridge Forrester. She didn't cautiously rekindle a friendship, she didn't suggest therapy to unpack their decades of mutual damage, she offered him forever, again. This proposal wasn't born of some newfound, healthy equilibrium, it was the desperate lunge of a woman clinging to the same obsessive hope that has defined her existence, the hope that this time Ridge will stay, this time he will choose her definitively over Brooke. This is the textbook definition of the insanity often misattributed to repeating the same action expecting different results. Taylor's attachment to Ridge exhibits all the hallmarks she coldly ascribed to Brooke, an inability to let go despite overwhelming evidence of incompatibility and repeated betrayal, a pattern of returning to the source of profound pain, an investment of self-worth entirely too dependent on securing this one man's love, and a persistent belief that this reunion will magically erase decades of cyclical heartbreak. Her life is the case study she pretends to objectively analyze in Brooke. Furthermore, the calculated cruelty of invoking her professional credentials elevates the insanity. Taylor didn't just say Brooke was clingy or foolish, she pathologized her rival's love from the assumed high ground of her therapeutic expertise. She attempted to transmute their personal, vicious rivalry into a clinical diagnosis, positioning herself not as the equally obsessed rival, but as the detached, superior healer observing a pitiful specimen. This is a profound ethical violation, a grotesque misuse of her professional standing to inflict emotional harm and gain leverage in a personal vendetta. It screams of a therapist utterly incapable of maintaining professional boundaries or recognizing her own blinding countertransference. How can she possibly claim objectivity about attachment styles when her own attachment to Ridge is the defining, chaotic vortex of her life? The pot-meat-kettle analogy doesn't even suffice. This is the kettle, molten hot and whistling furiously, accusing the pot of being warm. The dissonance is deafening. The impact on Brooke was visceral. The scene captured her utter shock, a rare moment where the usually articulate, fiery Logan was rendered speechless. It wasn't just the accusation itself, it was the source, the context, the sheer gall of Taylor Hayes, fresh from proposing to her husband, standing in her home, wielding psychiatric terminology like a scalpel to carve up Brooke's heart and justify her own claim on Ridge. Brooke's frozen silence spoke volumes, the dawning horror of being pathologized by her mirror image, the disbelief at the audacious rewriting of history Taylor was attempting, and perhaps, a flicker of painful recognition that the toxic dynamic binding them both to Ridge truly is a shared sickness. Her shock was the silence of a boxer momentarily staggered by a sucker punch delivered from an unexpected angle, not by a clean glove, but by a weaponized diploma. So, where does this insane comment leave Brooke Logan? Taylor's declaration was less sound advice and more a gauntlet thrown down, a declaration of war wrapped in faux concern. History in the fictional microcosm of Los Angeles that houses Forrester Creations teaches one unassailable truth: equilibrium is fleeting, and tables turn with the predictability of the Pacific tides. Taylor's current triumph, her smug possession of Ridge and her weaponized diagnosis, feels less like a stable victory and more like the precarious peak before a devastating fall. Several paths unfold. The phoenix rises, the last laugh. Brooke's silence won't last. Her core character is resilience. This profound insult, this violation from her oldest rival using the very tools Brooke lacks, professional credentials, could ignite a ferocious comeback. Imagine Brooke, not engaging in a catfight, but systematically dismantling Taylor's hypocrisy. She could expose Taylor's own desperate proposal, her history of taking Ridge back after every humiliation, her blatant misuse of her profession. Brooke might finally channel her considerable energies away from Ridge, perhaps finding genuine happiness and stability elsewhere, forcing Taylor to confront the emptiness of a victory solely defined by possessing a man whose loyalty is eternally conditional. Brooke's ultimate revenge might be indifference, leaving Taylor alone with the man she fought so unhealthily to win, realizing she conquered a hollow kingdom. The last laugh echoes not in recrimination, but in Brooke's liberated peace. The crumbling fortress, Ridge's folly. The other path leads not to Brooke's triumph, but to her devastating realization. Taylor's comment, however insane and hypocritical, might resonate with a brutal truth Brooke has spent a lifetime denying: Ridge Forrester isn't worth it. Watching Ridge inevitably waver, question his choice, or even drift back towards her despite Taylor's current hold, could force Brooke to see the destructive cycle with horrifying clarity. The tears might finally flow not from losing Ridge to Taylor, but from the agonizing understanding of the decades wasted, the self-respect sacrificed, on a man incapable of offering the secure, unwavering love she craved. Her unhealthy attachment might finally shatter, not because Taylor diagnosed it, but because Brooke, confronted by the sheer absurdity of Taylor's own mirrored obsession, sees the whole grotesque dance for what it is. The insanity of Taylor's comment becomes the catalyst for Brooke's painful, necessary awakening to her own complicity in the shared sickness. The endless cycle, soap opera destiny. Realistically, the most likely path is also the most tragic. The cycle continues. Taylor's hypocrisy will be exposed, probably by Steffi or an outraged ally. Ridge will feel trapped or conflicted, Brooke will be drawn back into the fray, and the unhealthy attachment tango will resume with renewed fervor. Taylor's comment becomes just another weapon in the arsenal, another layer of psychological warfare added to their decades-long battle, proving that in the world of Forrester Creations, sanity is often the first casualty of love. Taylor Hayes' insane comment to Brooke Logan transcends mere soap opera melodrama. It is a pivotal moment of profound character revelation and thematic resonance. It lays bare the core tragedy of the Brooke-Taylor-Ridge triangle, two brilliant, accomplished women whose lives and identities have been irreparably warped by their decades-long battle for the affections of a chronically indecisive man. Taylor's attempt to clinically pathologize Brooke's love while actively engaging in the exact same pathological behavior is a masterpiece of dramatic irony and self-delusion. It highlights the terrifying power of denial and the corrosive nature of obsession. Brooke's shocked silence is the sound of a reflection staring back, too horrifying to immediately comprehend. Whether this moment leads to Brooke's triumphant resurgence, her shattering realization of futility, or simply another turn in the endless, unhealthy waltz, one thing is certain: Taylor Hayes didn't just make a comment, she held up a shattered mirror to Brooke Logan, and in its fragmented reflection, both women's deepest, most damaging truths were laid painfully bare. The insanity wasn't just in the words, it was in the decades of history that made them possible, and the terrifying likelihood that neither woman can truly escape the reflection.